Hello, and welcome to our super prepared stream. I see 0 people joined to our stream. Welcome, Sergey. I see you. If you want to join to stream and say also welcome, I can add you to the stream if you want. Please raise your hands if you want it. If not, okay, you want. Okay, let's add you to the stream. Hello, Sergey. I cannot hear you. You should unmute yourself, or maybe something happened to his connections.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to see you here.
Great. So
let's wait for people to join.
Do you think like we should wait for someone? I think
we can start.
Yeah, I think we can start. Let me share my screen. And if you want it, you can stay with me and I will go through the slides. And I know that you have some questions about snap start of Lambda. And anyway, just like let's start our presentation. So first of all, before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Victor Vedmich. I'm developer advocate at AWS, and today during our stream, I'm going to speak with you about reInvent recap. What exactly reInvent is? I hope my network connection will be fine, because I see sometimes I am just like it's a black and then back to the normal. I hope so that like internet connection will be fine today. So in Germany, sometimes you just like can pay a lot of money for your internet, but sometimes it's not like so good as you paid for that. Anyway, so what I'm going to speak today is I'm going to speak with you about reInvent recap and what exactly reInvent is. reInvent is one of the biggest event in cloud community in general. It's not only related to AWS. Because if you look at the numbers, how many attendees, like 50,000 people joined to the reInvent. And it's not a conference during the one day. It's a conference during the whole week, just like started from Monday and finished on Friday. And why we do recap of the reInvent? First of all, because we have a lot of information, a lot of announcement during this week, and a lot of technical sessions. As you can see, during the reInvent, we did around 2,000 sessions and more than 100 announcements. And my goal for today, just like to cut down, like provide for you the shortest version of this announcement, what's exactly happened, what we did, what we announced, and so on, so on. So our agenda for today, just like, first of all, we will start from builder experience, announcement, serverless, DevOps, of course, compute, networking, storage, and security. Security is very, very important. And anyway, we will speak about security and what's the new you can find in security area from reInvent 2022. So, and let's start from the builder experience. Builder experience, it means like you as a developer, or you just started as a developer and you want to do something with, I know, like, for example, serverless applications. And currently nowadays, I see the big trend related to low code, no code, when you start to create your application without writing any line of the code. But at the same time, this application can work pretty fine. And application composer can help you to achieve this one. I mean, like, you can drag and drop some part of your application. Like, for example, on this example, I'm going to create some API, which will do some stuff for my application. In this case, it will be like get items, post items, post item, some specific item, for example, for my application, delete, and so on, so on. And drag and drop from the left side, where I see the list of the serverless components, like, for example, API gateway, S3, Lambda function, Lambda layer, DynamoDB, and so on, so on. I can drag and drop all of these components for my application. And it's like I see this trend like low code, no code, but honestly, I am not a huge fan of this one. I mean, like it's very great to start quickly with drag and drop some and see in the from visual part what's exactly happened with my application, but I prefer to work with Visual Studio, for example, or some another idea. And Application Composer exactly can provide it for you. I mean, like in Application Composer, you can start quickly with drag and drop some part of the serverless application, and it will create the connection to your local workstation and generate CloudFormation code or some code. And let's see on the real example how it looks like. As usual, I prepare some super small demo because I'm a big fan of the demos. So what exactly we are going to do? So we are going to create our new project. It will be a blank project, or we can load existing. Why we need to load existing? For example, you can have your own SAM template or CloudFormation template. It's related to the serverless application, and you want to create, like architecture view, what's the components, and so on, so on. In this case, I did already local from the scratch. And as you saw, I connected to my local machines. And it means like currently, as soon as I do something like drag and drop some the part of my application, it also generate for me, as you can see, some SAM template. SAM template in general, it's like presents what exactly how we're going to deliver these applications or these components. And from visual part, I can make some the configuration, or if you prefer, you can really quickly switch to code. Yeah, and through the code, manage your own application, just like do some more complex stuff, let's say in this way. So, but anyway, it's like what else can help us to write faster and higher quality code? It's of course Code Whisperer. Like again nowadays, like maybe from November 2022, after release of ChatGPT, everyone speak about AI/ML and how AI/ML can help us. In general, AI tools can help us to to lay off of our jobs and replace all of our like engineering stuff and so on and so on. And Code Whisper, I think Code Whisper will not replace, and I hope ChatGPT also will not replace us. But anyway, what exactly Code Whisper can help us? Code Whisper can generate a code for you based on your comments. Simple English words like, for example, I'm going to make a connection to MongoDB, for example, or upload some object to S3, or do some another stuff, and just like to describe this and write in English. And Code Whisperer analyze context, what exactly I'm going to achieve, and do this stuff, generate the code for us. I think like one of the biggest questions related to Code Whisperer, what about the license? And I mean, like, what's the code based? It was learned and so on. It's learned all based on our code. I mean, like AWS code. And I hope we will not have any issue with the license and so on. And also, it's integrated to EAM. And it means like you can define who has access to Code Whisperer in your organization. And as usual, let's see very, very quickly demo how it works. For example, in this demo, I like Python. It's very simple how you can start learn your any language. I know the guys from RS School, you prefer to work with JavaScript, but anyway, so what exactly I'm going to do? I'm going to upload S3 a file to S3 using server-side encryption. And what I really like from Code Whisperer, that Code Whisperer not only generate for me the function, but also help me to define what the parameters I have to provide for this function. Like, for example, file name, bucket, object, all of the stuff. Code Whisperer generated for me and provide some possible variation how I can implement this function in S3, how I can upload using server-side encryption. And I can select, the first one, the second one, or maybe some another variants of this one. So let's move on. And the next area, it will be serverless. And Sergey, I know, yeah, you have a question. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, while we are still here, speaking about Code Studio, is it, you mentioned SAM. So
yes,
does it use SAM under the hood?
Application Composer, yes. CloudFormation or SAM, yeah. Application
or
Composer.
SAM, cool,
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
And speaking about Code Whisperer, I thought it's still in the beta phase, or it's already in public?
No. It's public preview. So when we release some new services, sometimes we say like it's a preview, but mostly it's private preview. Some of the service we say like it's a preview, but public preview. Currently, Code Whisper is not the general available. It's not in GA. It's in the preview phase. It means like maybe you can see some not the best experience, but we do our best just like to do this like beta phase very smoothly and so on. So in general, public preview, it means like everyone can join and work with it, but again, it's not like GA, and it means like it's not private to deploy and use Code Whisper in production.
Yep,
Sergey,
great,
meanwhile,
thank
you just like unmuted yourself. Tricky question for you. What's the first serverless service in AWS released? It's Lambda or something else?
Maybe DynamoDB?
No, DynamoDB released long later, I believe. And yeah, it's the normal situation, like because when I started speaking about serverless, most of the people think like, oh, it's Lambda, Lambda, Lambda. But guys, let's be honest, serverless, it means like not only Lambda, S3, it's also serverless. Object storage.
Oh yeah,
Where,
the first one.
yes, and SQS, it's also serverless. And SQS and S3, which we released just like one of our the first services, a lot of like 15 years ago, something like that. I don't remember exactly the dates, 2008, 2007. I don't remember. But anyway, just like Lambda, it was not the first serverless service which we released. But in this section, I'm going to speak about Lambda, of course. And Lambda released almost 9 years ago. And from this period of time, we had a lot of new functionality, like new 100 features, 10 trillions requests per month. So it means like everyone use Lambda function. Not like everyone, but it's super, super popular service in AWS. And what exactly we release for Lambda function? And yeah, I know, Sergey, you have a question. So it's related to the snap start. But let me explain what exactly snap start is and why we decided to release this new functionality. When I speak about Lambda function, we have some phases of what's really happened under the hood. For every Lambda function, we create our virtual machines, Firecracker, and in this virtual machines, like it's super, super tiny virtual machine, we initialize the environment. It means like to create environment for you where you can run your own code. We download this code, we start the environment, we initialize the function. And this stuff, sometimes it can take a long time. I mean, like from this one to as soon as we are ready to do something with our code. This one it's called we call this called start because it can take a lot of time. Sometimes it's like several seconds, and especially when we speak about the Java, sometimes it can really take couple seconds, not milliseconds, but really couple seconds. But when we decided to use Lambda function, for us, it's super important to have like good scalability parameter because Lambda function can scale super, super fast. So what about if we create a snapshot of this initialization phase and upload it as to S3? And for next time, when we need to run our Lambda function, we will resume it from snapshot and start invoke and execute exactly our Lambda function. The biggest restriction of this realization is related only to the Java Careta 11. It's currently supported. So it means like as soon as I'm going to create a new function, and like again, as usual, demo, some super small demo, not JS or Python, only Java 11 Careta. So we have selected Java 11 Careta. And architecture also not currently supported ARM. It's only supported x86, like classical Intel processors. And what exactly I'm going to do? Currently, it's super simple Java application, and I want to run test. Test, it means like I will execute this Lambda function, and this super simple Lambda function is hello world. And let's see how it's long takes for me to initialize this Lambda function only for hello world, 380 milliseconds. Not bad results, but anyway, let's see what will be as soon as I enable snap start. Snap start is not required to update your code. Snap start enables like as additional functionality, like additional feature flag. So let's enable snap start. I switched from none to publish version, and it means like to enable snap start, I also have to publish my function. And currently, I still have not published my function. Let's do this one, and we provide some version of this function. Of course, it will be the first version, and publish. What exactly will be under the hood? As soon as we publish this function, we run your function and do this initialization stuff. I mean, like initialization phase is called start, and store the snapshot of GVM and store the whole initialization phase in S3. And for the next time, like as soon as you run, we will reuse the snapshot. And as you can see, only for Hello World, like for super simple Java application, we see the difference 65 milliseconds and the previously 380 milliseconds. And it also means like you will pay less because for initialization phase, you also pay, I mean, like it's execution time and you also pay for this execution. Questions, Sergey? I know you have someone.
Yeah, I tried the same path, but it didn't work with me. I'm still investigating the problem. But yeah, we can talk offline about this. Maybe I did something wrong, but I follow the same steps.
I don't know, like I try to not only for Hello World, I try to for some another like execution, and mostly it's show me 3, 4, up to 5 times faster. I understand like Hello World, it's not the best way to show and demonstrate, but anyway, it's really helped to cut down the amount of initialization phase. You just like copy the snapshot and execute this Lambda function. Okay,
but it's definitely a great approach, and I hope that you will keep investigating in other languages, not only Java.
The biggest question
See
here
how
is
it goes.
related to just like Java. Why exactly Java? Because for Java, it's a GVM. First of all, Java virtual machine. Yeah, and it's much easier to create this snapshot of the status of Lambda function and so on. But if you speak about, for example, so the Python, it's not in it's interpreter language, yeah, which you not need to create some artifacts and like, for example, jar for Java application, yeah. So I don't know what will be the future. I hope so. We will continue and make some, I don't know, fancy stuff with this one and create additional snapshot for in other languages. But let's see. Anyway, let's move on and all continue to speak about serverless stuff. It's related to event bridge pipes. I know like all of the people who work with Linux knows what this symbol is. I mean like this one. For example, I do cut from some file and do this like horizontal line. It means like it's a pipe from cut of the file and do some, I don't know, like for example, grep or AWK or set or some other stuff. It means like I filter some of the data from this file, then transform this one, for example, and store it somewhere. So what's exactly event bridge pipes? The same philosophy, the same approach, what we have in Linux terminal, this line. When we get some data from the source, filter them if we need it, like, for example, a grep, what the sources can be. It can be Kinesis, SQS, some another events from different sources. And for example, you have, I know, thousands of these events. You can filter them and enrich. For example, you need to add or transform or, I don't know, do some stuff like ETL stuff with these events. For example, through the Lambda function or step function and, I don't know, something like that, and send to the target. So it's real pipes. In terminology from Linux perspective, when we get the data, some sources, events, transform, filter, and send to them execution. One of the biggest benefits from this one, what I see, it's using the SQS when you can get this data from SQS and filter and send to someone to somewhere else. The next one, it's also related to Lambda function, of course, but it's more specifically to step functions. And step functions also can provide for you visual mode when you can create some logic for your Lambda function, for example, to waiting for some, I don't know, approval process or some events and so on. And previously, when we needed to create a parallel mode for step function, we had a limitation only 40 executions at the same time. But currently, you can enable a distributed map. Distributed map, if you're familiar with data science, I believe you know what exactly map produce, and it's here super similar to this approach. So we can split execution and start this execution in parallel. And currently, it's supported up to 10,000 execution. You ask me what's the use cases. For example, you have million objects in your S3 and you want to analyze them. I don't know, for example, it's some logs or some another stuff. And you can go through the whole of this S3 objects files, S3 objects, and do some stuff. Again, for example, extract, execute, filter, and so on. And currently, you can do it like in super quickly mode. I mean, like do in parallel in 10,000 execution. From my perspective, it's pretty good results. And yeah, like super quickly and faster finish your execution. Questions, Ricky, if you have something. If not, moving on to DevOps. Moving on to DevOps. Okay.
I'm trying. I tried to unmute myself. So the pipes.
Sorry.
The pipes. So they allow you to transform data on the fly. So you get the event, you transform it on the fly, and you provide it to the final destination already. Yeah, that's a good approach. Very useful thing.
Yeah. Just like you can do it on the fly, the same stuff. Like as I said, super similar what we have in Linux terminal. Like, for example, you echo or cut or get the data from somewhere and transfer. Or for example, you execute curl to get make some rel request and do some another stuff with just like everything what you exactly needed. And of course, when I speak about DevOps, we cannot skip, from my perspective, super interesting in the project. It's Code Catalyst. What's exactly Code Catalyst? When I speak about the DevOps, we speak about SDLC, how we manage and develop our application. DevOps, it's not about some tools. DevOps is not about cloud. DevOps is not about some technology. Mostly DevOps, it's related to the whole, to proceed with the whole execution of SDLC, software development lifecycle. And previously, we had some tools, not had, but we still have them, like code commit, code build, code deploy, all of the stuff, which can help you to solve your task in some specific area of this SDLC. And currently, Code Catalyst, let's say it's umbrella of the whole SDLC process, where you can start plan of your project, make a project management. Like, for example, I assign this task to you, Sergey, and you will do some, I don't know, like deployment to AWS. And of course, you should do it in the code, first of all, because we try to achieve everything as a code. We create a build, for example, our Java application, do some test, deploy, all of the stuff. And of course, it's super important also to do some collaboration. And let's see how it looks like. In Code Catalyst, in Code Catalyst, we have the first place, it's called space. Let's say it's like maybe for your department and maybe for whole of your organization, where you can create your project. And you can create from the scratch, but what I really like is that we can create our project from the blueprint. And it means like when we create from blueprint, it prepares everything what we needed to start to work with our application. And in this case, I know RESTful again, and in this case, I'm a big fan of to create something in JavaScript. And let's create our first application, single page application, and select the framework React. And we are going to deploy this application to CloudFront plus S3. We define the repository name. It means like it will create repository for us. Of course, Git, only Git. Please use only Git. We define some additional configurations and ready to create our first project. and it will generate everything what I said. Like it will create for us repository, it will create workflows. It's mostly like CI/CD pipelines. It will create environment. Environment, it means like, for example, development environment, QA environment, production environment. In this blueprint, of course, it will be only one environment, but anyway, we will have also environment. We have CI/CD where workflow, as I mentioned, and as you can see here, it's two workflows. The one is when we make some push to a main branch. Another one when we create some, for example, feature branch, where we can do some another stuff. Like from logic perspective, for example, run additional test or not run some test or not deploy to somewhere and so on, so on. We have a description of this project. And as you can see, we already have some workflow, which is currently in the progress of the running. And again, from UI perspective, we can see this workflow in UI, like in visual mode. But also, if we switch to YAML, as usual, all DevOps likes YAML file. And as soon as we switch to the YAML, we will see the same definition of this workflow in YAML file. Sorry, in this demo, I have not switched to there, but anyway, just like believe me, or you can go and try by yourself. Code Catalyst is not required to have AWS account. You can join it for free and do some stuff in AWS Code Catalyst without have a AWS account. Also, when we speak about collaboration, sometimes it's very important to have some isolated environment. And I believe some of you had the story what's recently happened in one of the biggest technology company from our close area. The first letter of this company, you had like they lost a lot of code base. For what reason? Because the people check out the code on the local machine. But what we can do in this case, we can create a separate environment, dev environment we call it, where you create separate virtual machines. It's stored in AWS, and you check out, clone your repository, or, for example, create a new branch, for example, and check out use these virtual machines. And in your idea, like, for example, JetBrains or Visual Studio Code or someone else, you use it as a client, and that's it. All the code will be located in remote virtual machines, but your preferred idea will be on your local machine, and the code store there. And of course, if your laptop is has not so much power, you can, for example, say, I want to prefer to use one of the biggest machines with 60 CPU, blah blah blah, because I need to do some build process and so on, so on. Very quickly and simply to start, and using just like, for example, Visual Studio Code or JetBrains idea. Questions, Sergey, if you have something?
Yeah, just to the Code Catalyst is free of charge, and you pay only for the resources that you create with Code Catalyst. As this approach is used for many AWS services, orchestration services. So the orchestration is done for you. It's free of charge, but you pay for the resources that are created.
Yeah, absolutely. And also in free tier, you have execution for 200 minutes of build process. So it means like the same approach what you can see, for example, in GitHub Actions and so on. I also forgot to mention about that Code Catalyst supported GitHub Actions. It means like if you already have your own GitHub Actions, you can connect it to the Code Catalyst and just like to execute your GitHub Actions. The next one area, it's blue-green deployment for RDS, because all the time when we speak about blue-green, and for example, if you remember my talk about CI/CD, and during the CI/CD, I also explained zero downtime deployment strategy, and one of them was blue-green. But when I speak about stateless application, it's pretty easy to realize blue-green. You have two separate environment, and you just like switch from one to another one, and that's it. But what about this stateful process? Like, for example, our databases. And currently, we're super happy to say you can create blue-green deployment for RDS. First of all, before you do the stuff, you have to change the parameter bin log format to OW or mixed. It's to store the logs because it's required to create, replication from blue to green environment, from primary to secondary. Doesn't matter how to call it, but anyway, you should to change the how you generate the logs and so on, just like for synchronization of the data. So what exactly currently I'm doing? I create the second environment, like my green environment for my RDS. And for this specific example, I want to upgrade my current MySQL from version 5 to version 8. And it can be very dangerous to do in the production, and it's preferred to make some test. And of course, I highly recommend if you're going to upgrade your MySQL from one version to another version, make sure that all of your configurations and your code works correctly with the new version. And blue-green, it's super useful in this scenario because we can create blue-green deployment for our RDS, and we will communicate with our application and make, for example, configurations that currently I send all of the traffic to the green environment, for example, my new environment, and can make some tests, I know, like synthetic tests, performance tests, everything, just like to check that my configuration, my environment works correctly. I see what's the difference. I see what the replica settings, where it's located. And as you can see, I have version 5 and version 8. Yeah, and it means like I'm going to run the switch over of these versions. But as usual, if you remember, what's the biggest drawbacks of blue-green deployments? It's a cost. Why is it cost? Because in blue-green, you should have two separate environments, like blue and green, and you will pay for both of these environments. And you don't have possibility, like to say, I don't want to pay for that. What you can do it, you can only, as soon as you switch over your databases, like for example, currently I'm going to do it. As soon as you switch over, you also should not forget to delete your environment, because currently, for example, I already switched from from this one to this one, like from old to the new. And please don't forget to delete your old environment. So blue-green, one of the biggest drawback, and of course the cost, because you should pay for both RDS environment at the same time. But another point, what about if I made the changes of the schema? Yeah, for example, in this one, in the first version, in the second version, I have two different type of the schema. Magic will not happen. It's not possible to sync this data or replicate this data in your schema version of your databases. Replication will work only if you don't have changes of the schema, and please be careful. But anyway, for example, for upgrade version of MySQL, it's very great, to test and only after that to make this switch over from one version to another version. And we are moving on. If you don't have any questions, Sergey.
Yeah, let's move on. You described pretty clear.
Thank you very much. So the next one is related to the containers, ECS. It's our, let's say, fully managed Kubernetes clusters, not like EKS where you have to manage a node group. It's fully managed for you. And what exactly we released? We say that currently when you need to communicate between different clusters, or for example, when you need to create services in one cluster, what's the current approach? You can publish the services through for example, some load balancer, or for example, install some service mesh. But sometimes it can be very terrible and very difficult to realize, because service mesh, for example, required additional sidecar containers like Envoy and so on. And currently with Service Connect, you can publish your services, use AWS Cloud Map, so simple as you create your DNS record in Route 53. So if you have multiple ECS clusters and you need to create a connection between services in these clusters, you can use Service Connect and make the connectivity between these services in different ECS clusters. The next release is related to automated failback. Question to Sergey for you. What is failback?
Roll back to the previous version when the fail happens.
You super close. Let me a little bit explain. So when we have a fail fail, it's pretty understandable. So what's exactly we have currently? Elastic disaster recovery, yeah? And for example, I have my primary environment and secondary environment, yeah? And I prefer to send my traffic to the primary. But we are living in real world and everything can be happened, yeah? For example, electricity, network connections, I don't know, some dangerous something happened, like for example in Turkey currently, as you can see, last 2 months it's like happened, I don't know, tremendous like it's super incredible, yeah. But anyway, so I prefer to use my primary, and during the failure we automatically switch to the secondary environment or to the secondary region, like in this schema. And but as I said, I am prefer to use my primary. And as soon as everything will be fixed here, I don't know, like we fix electricity connections, one network connections, and so on, we run failback, automated failback. It means like we remove our, like move our traffic from secondary, from recovery region to the primary, because in the primary region I have much better pricing, or I don't know, some another stuff located there. I don't know, like for example, some databases or data and so on, so on. So in currently automated failback, it means like as soon as my main region will be back online, we start initialize the procedure to move our data. I mean, like to move the traffic and execution from this environment, from the recovery environment to the main environment. So really great feature because you could like, pretty quickly to switch from one environment, one region to another region, and currently we can do it super automated without your interaction. CloudWatch Internet Monitor. We are monitoring internet. Yeah, of course. Because if you look at the backbone of AWS, you will see that we cover the whole world. I mean, like currently, if you're looking for some services which can help to speed up, like improve your latency for your application, what you can do? First of all, it's CloudFront. CloudFront, it's a cache. Yeah, I understand. Like we have a lot of edge locations, and you can, for example, to put your static data to the CloudFront or dynamic data, doesn't matter. But what else we have? We have a global accelerator, and global accelerator, it's a service which can help to understand what the closest location to the presence of AWS. For example, I located in Munich, yeah, and in Frankfurt we have our data center, and I believe I will be sent to the Frankfurt. But you're located in the Tashkent, and I don't know, maybe we have some edge locations also present, someone there. And for example, from this one, you will be you can easily connect it to this point, and using our backbone, through the backbone, send the traffic, for example, to the Frankfurt regions. What this means, like backbone, as soon as you into our backbone network, your traffic will not go through the internet providers, not through the internet networks, lines, and so on. And it's more reliable, more faster, because we control and we manage the traffic. Because in the internet, like BGP configuration can happen. Sometimes we saw it in 2020. A lot of companies made big mistakes with BGP. So what exactly CloudWatch can help us to say? For example, I have a customer from different locations, from Asia, from North America, I know, maybe from some South Africa, it's here, but like from Africa, for example, yeah. And my main data center located here. And I can see that in some area, you have problem with internet. How we analyze it? We use global accelerator data. Previously, we used it only for global accelerator, but currently we super happy to share with users information. And CloudWatch Internet Monitor can show you that your customer from these locations or from these locations has some issue with the performance. And it's not a performance issue related to your application, it's related to the internet connection in this specific area, because we can analyze what's exactly the connectivity in this area which is closer to our edge locations. So Internet Monitor can help you, will not able to help you to analyze last mile problem, if you understand what exactly means. I mean, for example, internet providers, my Wi-Fi connections or my cable means my flat, for example. No, but it help you to say, in this area, in this city, which is closest to some our edge locations, has an issue with internet based on our data which we analyze and provide for you. And also Internet Monitor can help you to say if you enable, for example, CloudFront, or move your application from Germany, I know from Frankfurt to, I don't know, like for example, to India data centers, maybe somewhere there, it will be much faster for your end clients based on the latency and so on, and show what the improvements of the latency will be in this case. And the last one related to the DevOps, it's CloudWatch data protections. Super simple. We can hide some data which is not useful, which is sensitive. For example, some personal data, card number, and so on, based on the patterns matching or and machine learning capabilities. Just like to detect that some of the data should be hidden, and of course you can unhide this data, but you have to escalate. Like to say, I want to do it, but in the normal day-to-day activities for developers not need to see this data, but for troubleshooting or for tracing some connections or some execution, we can do it. And the last one is related to S3, multi-regional access failure control. Currently, what exactly it means? Like, what means multi-regional access? I can have one endpoint, and this endpoint will be send the traffic to multiple buckets in different regions, but still you will have only one endpoint, and it's super simple to provide this endpoint for your web application. But previously, if we have some issue with this region, previously we sent the traffic to this region and got an error. And currently, you can say some of the region will be in the active mode, some of them will be in the passive. And for example, in Tokyo, Gorilla can wake up and do some crazy stuff. And of course, this region will be off for some period of time. And we can quickly switch this region from active to the passive and enable, I don't know, another region located in Mumbai or Singapore or Sydney, because Gorilla will not able to achieve these regions. So, compute. Questions?
Questions to compute?
No, questions to the previous questions.
For S3, so the failover will means that when I switch it back, the failover bring me back to the previous region which I used before when the situation normalized.
Yeah. In general, yes, but what exactly you can control? You can control which of the region will be active, and you will send to this traffic to this region to, for example, upload the data. Some of them you can say it will be in the passive. It still replicates the data to this region, but clients will work only from this one.
So that will be like read replicas, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Compute. I have some musics, if you can hear.
Yeah.
Music. Yeah, so compute. I am not going to speak with you about some, that we add new, I don't know, 20 or 15 new EC2 type of instances. Of course, it's super boring. But what I want to highlight it. First of all, we released new Nitra 5. Nitra, it's motherboard. Plus it's hardware plus software. Hardware is like motherboard in standard PC. For example, if you want to create your own PC, first of the item what you should buy, of course, is a motherboard, because as soon as you got your motherboard, you put to this motherboard processors, RAM, disks, and so on, maybe GPU and so on. And Nitra, what exactly? It's almost the same, plus additional software layer which can help us to create the hypervisor and split the EC2 instances and provide the right amount of EC2 instances for you. So what exactly we did with Nitra? We double of the transistors, we speed up DRAM, we speed up PCI bandwidth, and huge benefits of that, it's related to the network. First of all, 60% higher package per second, and 30% lower latency. But what I'm super like and really inspired that we say 40% less energy, better performance per watt. For you as end user, it means like cost will be less because we consume less energy, and mostly when we working with hardware, one of the biggest issue is related to energy. How many energy we consume to provide this performance, and with Nitro 5, 40% better performance per watt. The same if we look at the gravitons, or for example in the Apple system previously in the Intel and M1. If you're familiar with that, you understand like it's provide for you real huge benefits of from power perspective. But as I said, like it's super great that we currently did huge improvements from network perspective. And if you're super rich guy, you can order new type of the instances CSGN, which can provide for you 200 gigabits network bandwidth. You can ask, for what reason I need this network bandwidth? I don't know. For example, in Uzbekistan, you want to create some firewall. I hope no, but anyway, so you can connect all of your network internet connection to this instance, and I believe 200 gigabits of network will be enough to analyze all the internet traffic for Uzbekistan. I think so, not sure 100%, but anyway, it's one of the possible way. For another one, if you need to create some super high compute execution, you can do it with new Graviton 3E instance. Or, for example, if you're not ready to migrate to Graviton, you can do the same stuff on M6 or R6 instances, where you also can do connect to have 200 gigabits network bandwidth. It's super big improvements from network perspective. I'm not going to speak with you some another characteristics. You can find all of them on our official documentation if you need it. But like what I want to highlight it from this reInvent, 200 gigabit networks currently easily to create new instance with this bandwidth. And the last one announcement from compute is related compute optimized. Currently, it supported external metrics. For example, if you already have some, I know you're again super rich guy and you use Dynatrace or New Relic, and you paid for this observability tools or monitoring tools, and currently we can get this data from these tools, analyze them, and provide for you cost optimization proposals. Like for example, you order this instance like M6 and consume, I don't know, like 1% of this instance, and of course based on these metrics we say for you it's like maybe you need less compute and you can save a lot of money based on our proposal, based on your metrics. And oh, I forgot, it was not the last one. The last one is related to EKS, of course. What exactly we currently supported? Nitro, as I mentioned, it's our core components for virtualization, for hypervisor, and Nitro Enclave, it's a mechanism which can help us to isolate environment from one virtual machines to another. And currently, you can use Nitro Enclaves to control to create isolation based on the CPU and memory. Maybe you had this story about the leak that you can connect to from one virtual machine, so for example, from one port to the memory to another port, but using enclave, it will not be possible to do it. I mean, like it's super secure isolation for your ports in this case. And currently it's supported out of the box for EKS and for your Kubernetes clusters. Previously, you had to manage by your own to create some additional code. And moving on to the networking. So super
questions.
Yeah. I forgot. Questions.
I still have question. Yeah, speaking about Nitra, when AWS introduces new version of Nitra, will they change the hardware in the previous for the previous instance types, or it's just the introduction of new instance types?
We do.
Related?
We do old instance types to upgrade to a new version of Nitro. But it will be related when we order new hardware. I mean, like, for example, or new CPU, not like new generation, but the same CPU what we used in the old EC2 instances, but we will to our new Nitro 5. I mean, like in the new Nitro, new motherboard, because this motherboard, let's say we create our own manufacturer, we create all supply chain to create this motherboard, and for us that not needed to support previous manufacturer old version. Some of the reason exist. I mean, like how we connect, if you know, like chipset, for example, for some CPU. I don't know exactly so low level design, but I know the story that new old instances, as soon as we order new processors, like new hardware from Intel, for example, from AMD, we put it to new Nitro motherboard.
Yeah, you back. It was a glitch with internet connection for a little bit.
Okay.
Now you back?
Long story short, short answer on your question, yes.
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 Great. Great.
Okay.
Let's move on to the networking.
Yeah, as you can see, networking works not so great in Germany. I don't know why. So anyway, networking. If you look at what's the component we provide for our end users, in high level, you will see three components. The first one is compute, like CPU, for example, with memory to execute your C2 instances. The second one is a storage. S3, for example, UBS, EFS, all of the stuff like storage. And the third one is the networking. But if you look at the networking and the current realization, I mean, like on TCP, UDP, it's super old execution. And currently, for example, if you want to make connection from point A, for example, to point B, of course, we have different connectivity options like in this way and so on. But anyway, sometimes we have one single bottleneck, like this super expensive switch or router. And we cannot create, to send our traffic in multiple ways. In TCP UDP model currently, if you make a connectivity, for example, from here to, I don't know, to here, you're able to do it only in this way. So in this routing path. But what exactly re-release? Re-release not new service. It's not new hardware. It's new protocol. It's called SRD, Scalable Reliable Datagram. And it means like if you want to send your traffic from point A to point B, you can send it to use all of the possible network connections, like to send, for example, in this way, on this way, for example, or on this way at the same time. And it means like from scaling perspective for networking, it's a huge benefit. We can send the traffic from point A to point B, use all lines what we have currently. I mean, like, for example, the bottleneck, for example, here, the connectivity, I know only 4 gigabits, yeah, and I send traffic through these points. But let's imagine that all other also have 4 gigabits connectivity, and I can split my traffic and use all of this connectivity and send at the same time, use not only 4 gigabits, but for example, 20 gigabits, because I can split my traffic on 3 parallel modes. And from your perspective, I mean, like from the application perspective, you will not need to update your application. It will work with our hardware and with this new protocol. Let's say it's a middle, not in the middle, it's like on the combination from OSI model 3, 4, and 5 layers. Something is like in the combination. And you can find RFC of this protocol. And it's a public, you can read it in details, what's the realization and so on. From my personal opinion, it was one of the biggest announcements during the whole reInvent. As currently we have SRD for end user, for end customer, and where is it available? It's available currently for Elastic Network Adapter Express, and improvements from from network performance, from 5 gigabits to 25 gigabits, 5 times faster, only to use SRD as a protocol for this new network adapter. Of course, it will work only in combination with hardware and software, but this protocol works currently only with this network adapter. And this network adapter is not available for all the instances. Again, please check with documentation and make sure it's available for your specific EC2 instance.
So I don't need to, I just need to enable this adapter and that's it. I don't need to configure anything else. Or if I used before this adapter, it will start to work automatically for me.
Yes. You just
great.
like in general, what you exactly should do, just like you should enable your NI Express and UDP Express, because as I said, like it will work on the middle with TCP, UDP, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some question I got from previous, like for example, from previous conferences, from previous meetups, how it will work with UDP. It works pretty fine with UDP, and if we lost some of the components, we can, based on this protocol definitions, we can ask to resend some part of the package, for example. It's not a problem.
Like TCPing UDP,
yeah,
trying to resend some packages. And it really looks like mesh topology. For example, like mesh Wi-Fi work. That's great.
Yeah,
That's really very big improvement. Huge improvement.
Yeah, exactly. I would not say like it's fully like a Wi-Fi mesh, because in Wi-Fi mesh you make the connectivity and send all of this. But it's in SRD you can send, for example, if you have, I don't know, like from this point to this point 2 lines, you can use these 2 lines at the same time. And for example,
send part of traffic from this line and part of traffic through that line.
Yeah,
so you like enhance your bandwidth.
Yes. And for example, limitation of this line is like 5 gigabits. Yeah. But target and source support 10 gigabits, for example. Of course, it should be support, because you cannot you cannot generate traffic if you has, I don't know, like 100 megabits. You will not be able to.
Yeah, you cannot outbound your traffic.
Yes. But in general, if your source and target, for example, support 10 gigabits and you have 2 lines which is limited by 5 gigabits, your protocol, you can combine these 2 lines and send in parallel, and it means like you will consume the whole 10 gigabits performance, I mean, like from the source and the target. It's one of the biggest benefits what I see, because we have a lot of lines. Sometimes these lines, connections and these lines, it's not so have so great bandwidth, and we can combine 1 gigabits in 10 lines. So 10 lines, 1 gigabits, and sum up it will be 10 gigabits as a result. Yeah, let's move on. VPC Lattice. VPC Lattice, it's a new service. It's try to solve the problem that developers don't want to understand how we configure
again, we have some problems
how we
connection.
define what the IP range, what the or layer 7 from OSI. We currently create our service, send this service to service discovery, create service network and make the connectivity to the service network, and authenticate who and how has access to different services. What exactly it means? Like you have your own service network, you have your own services which can be located in different VPC, and you can have overlap in these VPCs. I mean, like, for example, this 10 blah, 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 this 10 blah, 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 this 10 blah, blah, blah. And you have overlap across all of these 3 VPC. And currently, with VPC Lattice, with this new service network, you can publish your own services, and these services will be able to communicate with each other based on our authentication policy. You can control what is the service and how it can create connection to another services. It will work on the network 169.256, if you're familiar with this network. But in long story short, overlap can happen with these VPCs, and using OSI model 7, we can analyze the traffic and create our authentication policy and connectivity between these not networks, but between these services. Still under the hood, it will create transit gateway, peering, all of these low-level components to make this realization. But it's super simply works with across multiple VPC, and you not need to like think in this VPC has overlap with another, and what's our approach? It will be our approach to create load balancer, private link, and so on. You can easily to control the traffic and to make the connectivity between service to service. I understand it's not so easy to just like fully understand what exactly VPC lattice. Currently, VPC lattice it's in the private preview. It means like I'm not able also to try and work in VPC lattice, but I think in the future we will see how it works, and I think if it's super interesting, we can create a separate meetup where I will explain how it works on with real demo, not only based on the current, like high level design. Storage. In storage, some updates from EFS. In AWS, we have EFS, EBS is what's connected to your EC2 instances. EFS is network storage, and currently what we have elastic throughput. You don't need to say what's the throughput you're going to use. You can just like pay what exactly you use. New lifecycle policy, 1 day can be set, and additional performance improvements, 60% lower latency. And for writers, also 40% low latency. But again, as I said, SRD for me is one of the biggest announcements during the reInvent. And currently, in this year, we say coming soon. We say EBS IO2. I understand this EBS is one of the expensive EBS volumes, but anyway, EO2 will support SRD in 2023. What exactly it means, like from performance perspective? Throughput will be improved 4 times. So it sounds like incredible. If you look at the current realizations, what's the current performance of IO2? It's like super great performance. But if we improve in 4 times, it's, I don't know, like it's super, super great. And also, write latency improve up to 90%, also big numbers based on this graphic, and especially on the long, it's long tail areas, like for example 5p percentile. And the last part of our meetup today.
1 second.
Yeah, please, of course.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit about EBS. When people think about EBS is just a block storage. So I create a EC2 instance, and it's a block storage. Why do I concern about network? But in AWS, when you create EC2 instance, this block storage cannot be exactly in the same hardware. It is connected through the network to your virtual EC2 instance. So you can have a like CPU from one hardware, block storage from another hardware, and memory from another hardware, and everything is connected through the network. That's why SRD is really crucial part here. And again, it's a really great improvement. And that's why.
You're right. From physical perspective, we have I don't know, like a lot of let's say servers, and all of them connected to EBS, like big EBS volume, and we just like cut in on this small part and provide for you. If you want to consume the local, for example, NVMe SSD, which can provide, I don't know, super significant performance, but as soon as you reboot your instance, you will lost your data, because in this means like your instance can be located here, but as soon as you stop and start your instance, it will be moved to another hardware part. And it's very important to understand. Yes, you will have significant improvements in VMware storage SSD, but you can lose this data. It can be useful if you have, I don't know, like to store in the logs, or you can create your super resilience application and you have multiple copy of this data, and you don't worry that, for example, you can lose one of them because you have, I know, like 6 additional shards or copies of this data. But yeah, in general, what you said, like you're absolutely right. EBS is separate hardware, and your EC2 instances connected to EBS through the network. For that reason, SRD, it's very important for just like to apply SRD to this connectivity, it will significantly improve almost everything, like throughput, latency, all of the stuff. Yeah, last part, security. And I want just like to pay for your attention. I understand like 1 hour, we almost done, just like I believe additional 5-10 minutes. But AWS verified access. It's verified access from somewhere. For example, I'm working for AWS, yeah, and we have an office in Munich. It's our Munich 14, we call it Munich 14. And I working from my home, for example, yeah, using my laptop. And I want to have connection to my some AWS services. Like in EPAM, you have Telescope, I remember, or some in other services. The same we have internally in AWS, some internal resources like Outlook, for example, some email services, some in other services. And currently, if you want to the secure connectivity, what we do, mostly we do VPN. Because through the VPN, you create connectivity to your some on-premise, for example, or to your cloud environment. And through the VPN, you create connectivity to the whole resources and you can have access to the whole resources. But verified access, it said it's VPN-less. So it means like you don't need to create a VPN. You publish some services. For example, this one, I don't know, like some service, people service. Let's call it people service, PS. It will be publicly available, yeah, but nobody has access to that one. Only who, based on the verified access, can have access to this one. I mean, like, based on analyzation, like, what's the user, like, authentication, what's the hardware, what's the location. For example, if I'm working from home, I have access. But as soon as I switch to public Wi-Fi from hotel, for example, yeah, I will not be able to connect to this people service because my current location is not allow me to have access to our people service. And we supported like trust providers associate with your applications and provide some additional policy like per application, per user, per group, per additional attributes like hardware, for example, and software. For example, you have not installed a lot of software security updates, and it's very important to have them. So verified access without VPN, you can create connectivity to your internal resources. In long story short, mostly to some services. But at the same time, we have another announcement, and it's called Amazon Verified Permissions. So previously, we have access to some services, but verified permissions, it means like when we're working with permissions, mostly we think about RBAC, role-based access, and ABAC, attribute-based access. Yeah. So, and verified permissions, what exactly try to achieve? In your application, you use RBAC and ABAC plus additional layer, or let's say glue of logic of your code, how user can have access to your application, what's explicitly allowed, deny, and so on. And what we try to do, we try to say, you have your own application, and please don't put your logic or how to work with permissions to inside to your application. Move this logic outside, and using RBAC and ABAC plus additional glue how to work with your like attributes or role based, what your user can have and how can access to your application, because it's related mostly to authorizations, what the permissions allowed to be for this user to do with your application. So in general, try to move this security part of logic, what user can do outside of your application, to external service, which is called Amazon Verified Permissions.
Question.
Yeah.
Do users need to install any additional agent on their endpoints, like local machines, or it's done somehow automatically during the login process?
During the login process, no need to install additional as I know.
That's great. That's great. And I see that it's in preview mode. Is it public preview or is it?
I don't know. Need to check, honestly, Sergey. Sorry. I don't
yeah,
know.
and the pricing model. Okay. So yeah, couple questions, but. But that's great. That's really a huge step, and it helps a lot to secure your applications and like corporate wide. It's very interesting.
You're absolutely right, because I remember when I worked with one of the customer, and before the COVID, the customer said deployment to production only allowed from the office. COVID came to us, and VPN works, but yeah, but currently what I see from a lot of different sources, like for example Thoughtwork radars or some another technology trends, zero trust architecture. It means like in verified access, you have zero trust principle, so you don't trust anyone. And if user not I don't know, moving from one place to another or try to connect from another device, and based on the attributes what we get in this verified access, we can analyze all of them and say, for this user currently you connected not from uh, your work laptop, and we are not allowed to do it. So just like as I said, it's super great because you don't need to create some VPNs connections and so on. But yeah, so I think it will help really to implement zero trust architecture for different access.
Every transaction should be verified. Yeah.
Yeah.
And very good example about the public network, like public Wi-Fi. So there are a lot of cases with man-in-the-middle attacks, and people can just sniff your traffic and steal data.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next one is security lake. Super simple. Not going to spend here a lot of time. What exactly is? It means like currently from all sources, what generated security logs you can store in some area security lake. The same approach when we working with data lake. Data lake, it means like you can analyze what's really happened to create some model, for example, for your machine learning and so on. What's the most important? It supported open security schema framework, and it means like if you already have something, it will work pretty fine. It's standard framework. And we have more than 50 security solutions which are currently supported because, again, open security schema framework, and like for example Okta, Cisco, and other guys supported out of the box. And you can analyze your data, for example, from Amazon Athena, from OpenSearch, run some additional models through the Amazon SageMaker, or for example do some another stuff. I don't know, like again, if you're a super rich guy and you have Splunk, so you can connect it to the security lake and do some analysis through Splunk. Or, for example, you have some another solutions. Super great, because I know people previously create their own data lake for security sources of data, because through security you can analyze and say, oh, potentially we can have some issue with our security. AWS organizations.
Wait, question before we move to organizations about the security lake. When you create landing zone, one of the accounts which automatically created for you is logs account. Is it already following the same pattern? Does it already include security lake, or you need to enable it?
What you should do, you should create a rule how you send this data. So what you said, like automatically will create it, yes, but for example, you store all of your logs in some separate environment like AWS account. And anyway, still you should create a rule how you upload this data to security lake. It will just like, I don't know about automatically upload. Need to double check. Maybe it's also potential can be set up, but as I know, you should do it manually. Just like, I mean, like to create, for example, you don't want to send the whole traffic, all data from some accounts, and just like Anyway, it needs to double check with that.
Yeah, but it's a good thing, and I think maybe in future they will implement it into the landing zone configuration initial setup. That's great.
Yeah, almost the last one. The last one will be in two. Also, what's regarding organizations? Delegation administrative accounts. Super simple. For example, you have, I don't know, some accounts and you prefer to spread this administrative responsibility and assign this role to some another people, and these people will do some, I don't know, management of this account, who had access to create a new users, and so on, so on, so on. Everything what we when we do with our accounts. Lambda functions inspector, currently it's supported in Amazon Inspector, and currently you can use Amazon Inspector to manage vulnerability across almost everything, like EC2, Lambda functions, so your containers images, all of them in one place, and to understand like if you have some vulnerability inside in your code or not. And the last one from security, it's related to KMS, external HSM supported through the proxy. So what exactly it means? Like you have your own HSM solutions. HSM is hardware what generate for you some keys, and these keys you use to encrypt and decrypt your data inside in AWS, for example, S3, I don't know, Lambda, and so on, so on. And I know that some customer not rely on Amazon, like AWS, and in general, like cloud solutions, and prefer to store the HSM, to control who has access to this physical device. I know, like based on some security issues and some security limitations, they prefer to store the HSM outside of any cloud providers and store only in on-premise, for example. Yeah. And what we currently supported, we supported to have connectivity to this external HSM located outside of your organization, outside of the cloud. And if we lost connectivity, for example, direct connect will be disappeared, or some internet connections will be disappeared, or you say like, no, I decided to leave, nobody will be able to decrypt or encrypt new data inside an AWS. A super secure solution for people who prefer to store their HSM on premise, but still want to use KMS solutions as encryption decryption mechanism for other services like S3 objects and so on. And for
how banks can use it.
Yeah, it's like super common.
It's one of the use cases for data encryption.
Yeah. For banks, yeah, huge and big enterprise where the privacy or data encryption is regulated, and like in the financial sector, bank sector, in every country they have some additional regulator like national bank, and for example, based on this regulator, your physical encryption device should be located only, I know, in some area, physical area, what's controlled by specific list of the people, blah blah blah.
So, do you think the regulation may change? For example, in some countries, there is a regulation that the data should stay within the country. Mm-hmm. Now they can say that the keys for this data should stay within the country, and the data can be stored anywhere until it's encrypted with the keys which are kept within this country. So I think this might be the good way to forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But at the same time, I had so many times that people not realize that they still think that it can be possible to decrypt this data. But if you understand the technology, if you understand how it works, it's not possible. Absolutely not possible. If you decrypt something using like this approach, like KMS, and got your keys from this HSM, as soon as I said, like as soon as you lost connectivity and don't have access to this HSM, this data, it's just like a binary file. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's very important that people should understand this technology, how it works, and rely to this technology, because sometimes people realize that if physical data located in this area, we rely on that, but not understand like sometimes encryption is also can help to achieve this one. Yeah, let's moving on. And the last one is related to our commitment as AWS organization and in general Amazon to be water positive by 2030. And in nowadays, as you can see, a lot of conflicts, a lot of issues with the energy. And in 225, we are going to be 100% renewable energy, and especially if you look at the from how many data centers do we have, how many powers it's consume, and again, please remember about Nitro 5, 40% less energy per performance, so on. So just like for us, it's very important, and I believe for the whole planet, it's very important because sustainability, it's like our planet, a lone planet, and just like Mars. I don't know, like when we will travel to the Mars. And as usual, please stay with AWS community, stay with user group Tashkent, and hope to see you offline in May. If you are not located in the Tashkent, you can try to find some another community group, user group, and other locations. It's very simple to go to AWS site and try to find, I don't know, if you're located in Nepal, maybe you prefer to visit some community in Nepal. And that's it. Questions, if you have, Sergey, because
I already asked my questions during the presentation, but do we have any in the chat?
Oh, it's just like no, this one.
Uh-huh.
No.
Then thank you so much, Victor, for the great recap. And as you said, hope to see you in May. We have a very interesting event.
Yeah, also hope to see you in May. Yeah, thank you guys one more time for our organization, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.